Coming up next on America's Hope, he's worked with the top artists like Bruno Mars and Pharrell. He's happy and he knows it. We're talking about Amir Windom, a man who knows how to gracefully struggle. And we'll introduce you to Ed Rush, a retired Marine fighter pilot who's now teaching people the business principles based on the Bible. All that and more next on America's Hope. Good evening, I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope, and wherever you are, we do hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. I know I say it all the time on this show, but it really is a fact of life that you do matter. You matter to God, your family, your neighborhood, and even to your country and the world. So we're glad that you can come here because you matter to us on America's Hope. And our program is designed to infuse you with a dose of hope. I mean, you're tired of being bombarded with all the negative news that you get daily. So this is the spot you want to come to for faith, hope, and love, truth, forbearance, and compassion. And having said all that, the next person I'm going to introduce you to, well, he has a long line of credits that I could add to his name, the superlatives, the adjectives, but I'll just introduce him as my friend, Amir Windom. Thanks for being on the program,
Kelly.
man. Good to see you,
brother.
So Amir, good to see you. I'm honored to have you on America's Hope, and you are, for lack of a better word, one of the great influencers of young America.
Whoa.
You know,
that's heavy.
I know it's heavy, but
like
you have influenced people through music, through film, through faith, through hope and love, all the things I've talked about. So let's talk about the fact that you've been able to represent so many good things about young America. How did that become a possibility for you?
Man, so there was this guy way back in the day named Kelly Wright. And I just saw him on TV, and he was winning all these Emmys, and I said, I gotta be just like him. But then I realized he was just an amazing man, so I just had to model myself after him. But that's a true story. However, the other true story is, sometimes I look at my life, and people always ask me, like, how did I get to where I am, you know? They wanna hear, I guess they expect me to say, oh, I learned how to play Mozart's covers blindly at the age of 5. But that's not it. To be honest, a big part of how I've gotten here is just by being a good person.
Yeah.
And as simple as that is, I think that becomes a lost form of human nowadays, where people just don't promote being a good person. And so I was blessed to have, parents that slapped me upside my head when I needed to. I was blessed to learn the art of no. And being able to, know when I need to say no to things, and just also seeking a variety of people around me, that being mentors, spiritual advisors, good friends. And I mean, it's an effort, and I think it's something that I think we need to teach our youth a little bit more on the steps on how to soulfully be a good person. Because I think, you're pumped a lot with surface, how to look good, but it's really how to feel good and be good too.
And see, I like the way you have defined and described yourself soulfully, and that's why I wanted to ask that question first, rather than telling people who you are, what you've done, how you did it.
I appreciate that.
And now I can tell them.
Okay, here we go. I'm joking.
Because you did all this from a place of humility, and you've accomplished all of this from that place of faith. And you're still doing all of this because of that place of love, and that is to go on to win 8 Grammy Awards. Mm-hmm. You've worked with and helped the careers of Bruno Mars, Pharrell, Happy. Mm-hmm. Are you happy?
I'm very happy. I'm very happy. Yeah, see?
We are good friends, so from time to time in this conversation, you're going to hear us talk about some things that will make us laugh. You've even helped develop the career of Kanye West. And so many other people that we haven't even talked about. But for you, a young college student from FAMU, Florida A&M,
shout out Rattlers.
Looking at it from that perspective, from the outside looking in, one would have thought It's impossible to do what you've accomplished in your young years, becoming a major influence because of music and the influence that you. And look, by the way, "Happy" is not a sad song. It really lifted a lot of people up.
Yeah, man. I mean, to this day, and I think that's why, when we talk about humility, when I look at my career, sometimes I'm absolutely just shocked, and I'm like, God, like, why did you choose me? And it's hard to not say that you were lucky, because you just know that it's really hard to get into my industry, and it's hard to stay in my industry, and it's hard to, my industry, you have to continuously defeat yourself. You can't do the same thing over and over again. You have to literally defeat yourself. And it's hard to do that and keep being creative and thinking that you're going to create something that people are going to like, because you're in a people pleaser industry as well. I could think something is phenomenal, which has happened. I always tell people I've won 8 Grammys, but think about how many Grammys I haven't won. When you look at it like that, it's like, well, what are you doing there? You're actually kind of trash. But I'll say this though. One thing that helped me, and I this is something from growing up in urban America, but you can relate to, is I love where I came from, because things were tough at times. You're around a lot of things that were internally tough to see and just tough to hear about. Just growing up in Decatur, Georgia, which is, it's very, very urban America. And, it is one of those places where most people don't go to college, and, you have to be athletic to get out of there. But one thing that growing up there that I love is that it taught you how to gracefully struggle. And so to me, that's really a big reason why I am where I am, because it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter who your parents are, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle. And so growing up and starting out like that, it taught me how to gracefully struggle and prepare to struggle. I prepared to struggle. So to me, when things got tough when I was 18, 19, trying to peruse through this industry, I was used to struggling. So I didn't lose, my mind or just get emotionally flustered. I just like, oh, this is normal. I got to work hard. I got to figure this out. And I think that's what I never lost, is that figure it out component of it. So no challenges scared me, because I prepared to struggle. And I always tell people, I think that's the cheat code, is when you mentally prepare to struggle, you start getting more confident about any struggles. You're like, oh, I went through this, and that, and you look back like, oh, I survived it all. Let's go. What else we got to get through? And before you know it, you're 38, and you're doing some amazing things, and then you're sitting next to your friend Kelly Wright talking about your career. And it's particularly, you want people to know, hey, and that's why I loved how you led with what you led with without asking me, naming all my accolades, because sometimes people, that's what people do. They
get impressed by what
they get impressed by that, and you're like,
yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
The struggle is more important.
Wait, there's more.
Yeah, the struggle is way more important,
Yeah.
because that's what got me here. It's not so much the accolades. It's more so me surviving so many different things that allowed me to, to accomplish a few things here and there.
Look, the struggle is real, and what you just talked about in terms of your story, which I find so amazing grace to gracefully struggle.
Sounds like your next book. You guys heard it here first. Kelly Wright's newest book coming out.
I stole it from you. Gracefully
Just
struggle.
let me do the foreword.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. So in gracefully struggling, you talked about your family being there for you. There are a lot of young children in America today who no longer have that home. I just spoke to a gentleman the other day. Well, I can say his name, Larry Elder. He was saying one of the principal problems in America today is that so many children are fatherless.
Right.
And Amir, you know me. What I like to convey to people is that the greatness of America begins in the homes of its people.
Yep.
So that means the mother and father at some point have got to be involved. And if you take one factor away, what happens?
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, that's the one thing about, because I've spent time going to prisons and talking, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't particularly enjoy doing that, because it's kind of like, hey, I'm coming here to talk to you for an hour or two. I'm gonna try to inspire you, and then I'm gonna go back home to my patio and have some lemonade. So it's tough to reach them in a way that you feel like you're genuinely inspiring them. But when I think about that dynamic, when people don't have parents, and their background looks a lot different than mine, where they didn't have parents, or they grew up in a 10-kid home, and the mom, was just barely trying to make it. I then switched to what I know you talk about a lot, and that's faith, and I think that's a big part of all of this. I mean, we don't have to believe in the same, religious things, but I think no matter what you believe in, faith is a key part of it. So I always tell people this: no matter what you believe in, we're born with this. Every human is born with the same thing. And I remember going to this prison and talking to these prisoners. And so the one was, all of them had committed violent crimes. One was a murder, armed robber, right? So they're all telling me their story, their backgrounds. Most of them didn't have parents, just really tough upbringings. And the only thing I could offer them was like, look, I think what you've been through is absolutely a part of what happened to you and why you're here. However, one thing that we do have in common, because I did have a parent, I did have two parents. I had my mother and my father. I did go to college, and I have now the traditional, you could be successful look. However, I was definitely in trouble a lot growing up. I grew up in the hood, so I had a lot of the same temptations. And I said, one thing I would challenge you, this may not be true, but this is what I would challenge you. We are all born with a conscience. And I'm going to tell you how I know you have a conscience just like I do. Because when you committed that armed robbery, did you sit in that store and count that money and drink a Slurpee and wait for the police to come? You got what you came there for and you left. Yeah. Because you have a conscience. Because your conscience told you you're going to get in trouble and leave. And so we all have that. So the challenge I said to them was, let's try to work on how you can use your conscience beforehand. Because it's there. It was there. That nervousness you felt, all the second thoughts that you had, should I do this, should I not? It was there. And when I said that, they looked at me like I had given them a cure, to cancer. And I think that's what you hope happens after a while, is that your conscience, no matter what your religious beliefs are, can work for you just to start, again, getting you to be a good person day to day. And I think that was a key thing that I remember.
You remind me of Frederick Douglass, who once stated that it's better to build strong children than to repair broken men. And a lot of times we find ourselves broken in these environments that we grow up in, urban America, rural America, where fathers are struggling and they may not be at home, or they may be working and just be an absent father. In my case, it was no father at all, just a single parent mother who had a mean left hook.
I was wondering how you got that, still that knot under your left chin. It's the mama knot.
When we come back, we're going to talk about something very important to Amir's life, and that's his family component. We're going to take a break. You're watching America's Hope. I'm with Amir Windom, and he's a friend to the show, a friend to all of you, especially if you're happy and you know it. We'll be right back in a moment. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm honored to have a very good guest here, a good friend, Amir Windom. I can say it now, multiple Grammy Award winning producer. He's also produced films. We're going to talk more about that. But what I really want you to know about Amir is his life force. His life force and the soul of what he does. See, as you and I talked earlier, we can look at all the accolades and the accomplishments, but what made you was birthed in struggle.
Yes.
And I like to tell people that hope, we talk about that a lot on this show, but hope is born out of despair and troubling times. You are the product of that kind of hope and courage, most notably in your mother.
Yeah.
Please share that story with us.
Because, so my mother, as you know, man, she's very dear to me. She is a 4'11" Korean woman who was a product of the Korean War, and she also was a product of the very extreme and unfortunate conditions that were going on in Korea at the time during the war, where she was essentially exiled. And they were, making sure that Korean kids that were born during that time, because they had made it legal for women to sell their bodies, or they forced women into selling their bodies, which became a main source of their economy at the time. So there was a lot of Korean women who were, let's say, forcefully impregnated. That being my grandmother. So my mother was born, and typically, instantly, the child would not have any life. My mom's mom, being the courageous fighter she was, she found some way to get my mother to let's say, a homeless beach, where a lot of the mothers that were exiled, and even some of the young kids that were born that were not supposed to be there were kept essentially hidden. And so my mother's mom got her to this beach and just felt like that's the best shot of life I can give you, because if I keep you with me, it's inevitable what's going to happen. And so my mother stayed on this beach and was taken care of by this beach mom for about a year. And my mother ended up getting sick, and at the time you couldn't just take a child to an orphanage or a hospital. So they literally took her nearby one, tied her to a tree in hopes that someone will find her.
Wait, they tied her to a tree?
Tied her to a tree, yeah. So a few days later, the Holt International, which was an adoption agency, and also that is from America, but was based there during the Korean War because they heard of what was happening. So they kind of came in and literally saved so many lives, including my mother's. So they found my mother. She was barely alive. They took her into their orphanage, where she stayed for many years until she was about 5 or 6. And ultimately got adopted into a family in Compton, California, of all places. So she went from Korea to Compton. And, my mom's her early start was just unbelievable.
Struggle.
Yeah, it was a big struggle. And, thank God for the Holts. Thank God for the Hendersons in Compton, who the African-American family just decided to take in two young Korean orphans, and that's how she grew up. She grew up in Compton. So, the other cool thing, there's so much more in the story, obviously, but she never knew her parents. She never knew who her mother was nor her father her whole life. And then maybe 5 years ago, Ancestry.com takes it, she gets this hit, and of course she had gotten hits before, but this was like a hit, because it was like, this person is like 99% related to you.
Wow. So
she reached out, and as you can imagine, someone reaches out and says, "Hey, I think I'm related to you." People get a little skittish, like, whoa, did my dad have, some secrets? So it definitely was that initially. People were a little concerned, what is now my aunt. They were a little concerned that Papa might have been a Rolling Stone, which came out to not be true. They ended up confirming that was actually my mom's sister that they got the hit on. And so, of course, my mom finally found out who her mother was. Even though she had passed away by this time, she finally found out that her mom was this, young Korean woman that essentially migrated from Korea to Sacramento. Actually married an American soldier and lived in Sacramento. So when my mother went to Stanford for college, she was, less than 50 miles from her mom the whole time.
My goodness.
Yeah, so didn't know it. So
and she went to Stanford.
Went to Stanford, yeah. My mom is, you talk about a Jeopardy master, just knowledge and information and dictionary. She is a very intelligent person. So yeah, she went to Stanford. She was so disappointed when she realized that I'm not that intelligent. I'm not going to Stanford. You can let that idea go. But yeah, she went to Stanford. So my mom is definitely a scholar.
Amir, but wow, you're living a scholarly life because of just the hope that your mother infused in you, as well as your dad. And first of all, it's a touching story, and it's a story that talks about that struggle.
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
And your mother learned how to gracefully struggle.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
And it seems to me that the one thing she birthed in you, along with the help of your father, of course, is that hope prevails.
Hope prevails. My mom says that every time, because I used to always say to her, well, I just want to grow up and make sure our family's happy. She's like, we need to be making sure that we have joy. She would always correct me with that. So I I take, I never really got in this industry to make money. I never got in this industry to be famous. And that's why I'm kind of, why I always cringe a little bit when you talk about, my accolades. And it's just because that's not what I want people to really know
Brother,
about.
that's called
me.
humility.
Yeah, and I mean it's just who I am. It's not a front. It's just who I am. It's just every time somebody reads my bio, I'm under the table like because what I want people to know about me is just how I make them feel, and that's what I want people to take from it.
So your why is you got into. I can't speak it for you, but what is your why for living?
I'd say this is one of those moments where you got to say something real deep and do like this. But no, I'd say early on, man, there was something in me that I saw the difference between being successful and significant. And I wanted to be significant. I wanted to be more significant than I did successful. The success is the money, the accolades, the material things. Significance is being a motivator, and someone that is inspirational, someone that people want to be like, for the internal reasons more so than just I want to be successful like him. So I think significance is what drives me more than success, and I think that's been my motto for a very long time. When I was 18 or 19, I just remember being on a plane one day and thinking about that, like, okay, I see the success, I see the Grammys and all this stuff, but what does significance look like? And that's, being an amazing father, being an amazing son, and just being someone that, when people interact with you, they feel genuine light, and they get inspired to be a good person, more so than I'm gonna go win a Grammy.
No, you're hitting the nail on the head because everybo's in search of significance.
Right.
Whether they realize it or not, they really want to be significant. You and I have so much to talk about, and I know in the essence of time, because you have a lot to do. I mean, you are.
I'm here for you, Kelly. Okay. I'm here for you.
I got to ask you though, because you also went into the faith-based space in producing movies, films. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that.
Man, so in line with Happy and things like that, I'd say in 2013, I was very concerned with the content that was being pumped into our souls. I mean, it was as if I've always felt like, do you want to go to a club and hear Kirk Franklin or somebody in the club? No. So you need an artist that's going to give you that kind of music. Or, if you're in Korea, do you want to hear slow ballroom music? No, you want to hear some K-pop, right? So you need balance, point is. But I started seeing a shift in the industry where the balance was doing like this now. The balance of the quality of music, the quality of content started to really shift. And things got very, the visualization as it relates to more sexual content started picking up. And then obviously violence and just stuff that we know, if you're pumping that in your spirit and your soul every day, I don't think the outcome is going to be good. So for me, I said someone has to go the opposite direction. Someone has to. And so I made a commitment, like, look, if it's not going to touch someone's soul, I don't want any parts of it. I don't want to have anything to do with anything that's going to perpetuate violence and just over sexualization of things. Like, that's too easy. That's an easy thing to do. So for me, I said, it's not so much I'm going to make faith-based things, but that's just where I was pushed to.
That kind of pushed you there.
I got pushed there. So we ended up, so on the music side, if it's not soulful, I'm not touching it. So that's where Happy came from.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof.
That's where a lot of the Bruno Mars things came from. Of just, I want to make people feel something. I don't want to create this kind of stuff that just, touches your arm and rolls off. And so on the music side, that was it. And then the film side. We created a movie called Restore Me, which is my first faith-based film with the director, a good friend of mine, Ryan Lamar. It was my first project, and I mean, it was purpose-driven for sure. It gave me a lot more purpose as far as my role in this industry, and it's to create content that absolutely touches the soul, in a meaningful way. So we did that, and then we had I executive produced Canal Street, which was a ton of fun. Doing that because that movie touched on so many different things at such a particular time when racial tensions were high. This is around a time where You had George Floyd, and you just had so many different things happening back to back. I'm sorry, not George Floyd, but in Florida, help me out, that started all this stuff.
Oh, you're talking about Trayvon. Yeah.
Trayvon Martin, yeah. So, you felt a sense of responsibility to not just tell one side of the story, but give people solutions on how we can come together more. And a part of it was just doing what we're doing now. Sit down and talk to each other and have raw conversations about your perspective. So that movie touched on a number of things, including just, faith too. It wasn't even, I wouldn't even say it was a faith-based movie legitimately. It wasn't talking about Christianity. It was just literally talking about
faith, right.
faith. And I'm very proud of that movie. That was one of my
Should
favorite
be.
projects to work on, because we really, I think, beautifully told a lot of stories and gave solutions on how we did more than just entertain you for 2 hours. So that movie was fun. Plus, I did the soundtrack.
Before I let you go, I got to ask you one question.
Uh-oh.
What's your hope for America?
My hope for America, very similar to NTD's mission, is that we continue to come together. What I hope for with America is that we can just sit down sometimes and just talk to people that don't look like us, that aren't from the same place that we're from, and just understand each other better, because I think the more cultured we are, it absolutely makes us a little bit more cohesive and loving and caring for one another. So that's my hope for America. And I also hope that everybody watches this show. That's my next hope for America too. Everybody. I'm talking about 3-year-olds all the way to 92-year-olds.
It's family friendly.
Black, white, Asian,
family-friendly.
everybody.
I like your hope for America. That's that table of brotherhood, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you,
Love
brother.
you, man. Also tonight, we're talking about business. We'll be talking to Ed Rush, a retired Marine fighter pilot who has now challenged thousands of people to get on board with faith and implementing the dynamics of business principles and making it work. That's next on America's Hope. Welcome to America's Hope. It gives me great pleasure to bring on my guest, Ed Rush. He's a decorated Marine Corps officer, an FA-18 pilot, and 5-time #1 best-selling author. He's no longer serving right now, but he is serving humanity in a very big way, because, Ed, you like to instruct people on how to have faith in God and, oh, by the way, put his principles into their business development and their entrepreneurial skills. Let's start right there. Talk to me about why you find that as being one of the most fundamental things that people can do to not only help their business grow, but help their lives improve.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question, Kelly. Thank you for having me on the show, by the way. I just really honor what you do here with the content that you share. And yeah, my story really, I was in the Marines. I came out of the Marine Corps. I started building businesses. Actually started building and selling businesses, kind of grew and became successful. But I was one of those people, and I was a church guy. I was one of those people who believed that, the church stuff was over here, all the spiritual stuff was over here, and the business stuff was kind of over here. And they weren't really like, there wasn't much in common. I didn't think God was all that interested in that. At least that's what I was told. And then one day, I was sitting in my chair. Actually, this little chair is sitting in my office right here. It's where I sit and, read my Bible or pray. And I was sitting there, and I had heard a sermon that weekend, and the pastor, that verse where Jesus says, like, can you tarry with me for 1 hour,
Yeah.
1 hour.
Yeah.
And, I'm a Marine, right? So I'm like, I can take a challenge. So I said, I'm going to sit in this chair and I'm going to pray for an hour. So I took a piece of paper and laminated it, like a Marine's supposed to do. And I had all the people's names I was going to pray for. And I sat there, and about 5 minutes into praying, my mind, started to wander, like happens to most people. And then I brought it back, and then my mind started to wander again. I brought it back. I was getting very frustrated. And all of a sudden, like 20 minutes into this, I realized what was happening. That afternoon, I had a discussion with a potential client. It was a big deal. It was about a 6-figure deal that was going down. And I was thinking about that deal. It was a really big issue, or, big thing in my business. And my mind kept wandering back and forth to that deal while I was sitting in the chair, like kind of praying. 20 minutes into it, Kelly, like a bolt of lightning, I realized it wasn't me being distracted. It was actually God coming down and saying, hey, let's talk about this. And in that moment, like that gap in between business and spirituality, like came crushing down. I realized God's not only very interested in business, but it's actually the vehicle with which he makes a lot of changes in the world. Uh, the governments of the world, as we've discovered, are very dysfunctional at creating change. Nonprofits, in certain cases have difficulty creating kind of change. Big philanthropic groups. What ends up happening if you want to change the world is you create an entrepreneurial vision and follow through. And I realized that as God sort of came together, my whole world came crashing together. And I realized that he's really interested in the business world. In fact, he's really interested in your growth as a person, your connection with him, also your connection with others. And that was really the start for me.
That is a beautiful explanation of why you do what you do. Having those conversations with God and emerging the spiritual with the practical aspects of business. And I really think what you're talking about is so sound, not only biblically, but also just life. It really has some sound principles there. So in doing that, when you made that breakthrough and realized that it was a helpmeet to you, how did it help improve your business? Because, man, you got me thinking now, because if you go back to the book of Proverbs, it's filled with business advice.
Big time. Actually, that was like one of the first things I did. So when this whole world changed, just like you said, I actually went back into Proverbs. Proverbs is an unbelievable book of wisdom, right? What I did is I took a little pen, like the one in my hand, I drew a little dot next to every verse that talks about business, money, transactions, anything that we would relate to in terms of the business world. It's about a third of the book, by the way. It's unbelievable how much of the book, right? And even like in the beginning of the book, you see that there's this character called Wisdom described as this woman. And with her, she brings great silver. It says that she's with, it's like this transactional nature that God blesses when you connect to wisdom. So I started down this road to try to understand wisdom. If you're watching this, you can see over my shoulder, there's this little pyramid. I don't have time to like break it all down, but fundamentally what I teach business owners and entrepreneurs to do is to start their business thinking at divine wisdom. Like right now, most people, when they think of business, they start in the middle, which is knowledge, data, or reaction, which is at the bottom of this wisdom pyramid. As a business owner, your first step always should be to start at divine wisdom. There's low effort, big result. I work with people in the business realm who would never go to church, ever. But they walk into a business event, next thing you know, they're hearing from God. So it's fun.
And while you're talking about that, you have spoken to thousands of people about business and faith and merging those two. And you've spoken to people who have no faith at all. They're atheists, or they may be of different faiths. They're not just Christian, they're Muslims, they're Jewish, they're Hindu, they're Buddhist, they're everything, because business really brings people together from all walks of life. How's that working for you?
It's great. So here's the thing. We have this whole, right now in our country, we're talking about how divided we are, right? Everybody's, disagreeing on all these points. I will tell you, you come to one of my events, you will see every person from every walk of life. We all love each other. We're all on mission. It's like this morning, by the way, I go for a walk every morning, about an hour and a half walk. And this morning on the way to my walk, I was listening to the Love Train, just so you know.
It's all right.
And in your song, you're like, hey, we're all together. Like we all crimson, right? We all bleed crimson. And I was like, that's exactly what we do. And so when you come together, like we're not marching, and disagreeing with each other. We're all coming together because we have a mission. Yeah. And most entrepreneurs, just so you know, most entrepreneurs, their mission is to change the world.
What a unique approach to follow it from a biblical perspective, and that's seeing people from all walks of life being drawn to the truth that you're talking about. Such a great opportunity for you to put into people's lives, or deposit into people's lives, a hope and a future. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, I want to get more into that political aspect, because you said something earlier that we've got to come back and talk about. I'm talking to Ed Rush. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm talking to the highly decorated Marine Corps FA-18 pilot, Ed Rush. He's no longer serving in the military, but he is serving humanity with his books about business and how to help people do better business by doing better in their faith walk with God. And Ed, you've been able to reach across all spectrums of life, different backgrounds, people with different color, ethnicities, and even gender. So when you see all these people coming together because you've based everything on what you've learned biblically about business, you know, you just talked to me about how you have two polar opposite people still coming to a common ground of saying we can change the world if we follow these principles that Ed's talking about. I just got to, I marvel at that to see how good the business plan is.
You know, it's interesting. So my last event, so I was on stage talking about a very specific topic, and I always ask the audience for interaction. They're welcome to share, ask a question. And a woman stood up and she said, "I just want to let you know I completely disagree with what you just said about the topic that I was teaching." And she went on to say why she disagreed. And I will tell you, full honesty and transparency, 5 years ago, Kelly, that would have really bugged me, like really, really got under my skin. And she got done speaking, and I just said, "I just want to let you know what you just did is perfectly allowed here." I said, "When we share ideas," I said, "I'm not right about everything." I said, "You know, I've changed my mind on a lot of things. I'm sure 10 years from now, I'll change my mind on a lot of things that I teach now." I said, "When we get together and collaborate and share ideas, we actually come up with a better idea together than us sitting over in our little tree houses, sort of throwing rocks at each other."
Regardless, if you disagree with them, you agree to disagree but still live in harmony. Why can't we see that in Congress? You talked in the first segment about how governments are very dysfunctional. Why can't we get this on the table of brotherhood among members of Congress?
Yeah, I think we can. I think actually, as a country, I think we're actually heading in that direction. Sometimes it takes some pain to pull out our strengths, but I will just tell you, the answer I think to the question is we are rewarding the wrong thing. Bottom line. So if you take, for example, just an energetic scale, on the side that I was just communicating, that's love, empathy, kindness, compassion. Really high energy around that. You can almost feel like when you get around someone that you feel that way about, you actually get goosebumps. You're like so excited to see them. You think about people like that you really care about. And then it goes into this huge trough. The trough basically in the middle is apathy, right? There's nothing good that happens there. There's no energy. It's just sort of stuck energy. And then back up the trough on the other side is anger, frustration, and discouragement, right? Well, our kindergarten level leadership, okay, and I don't mean that as disparagingly as I did. I guess I do. Our kindergarten level leadership a long time ago realized if you want to get someone excited, animated, if you want to get someone to donate money, you could do the work and you could do the inner work to communicate love, empathy, kindness, compassion. But none of them have done that. So they realize the only other option they have is anger, frustration, and discouragement. And it's interesting when you see what people campaign on, like the big issues that people campaign on. We look at both sides, by the way. This is the reason why I used to be a Republican, right? So, I mean, I grew up in a very conservative home, Republican, went in the military. But then I realized, like, I don't want to be told what to think about all the different issues. And so I kind of left that treehouse. Then I got some really liberal friends and realized I was having conversation with these people. And I realized I could do a lot more good not shooting my arrows from my treehouse. And by the way, I have some amazing Republican friends, and on all sides. I'm not being contentious. I'm just saying our leadership learned that if you stir anger, you stir votes, and you get money. And we're rewarding people for that. And I think it's high time that we stopped.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but you've also talked about applying the biblical principles to business, which means that you at some point learn to apply those principles to your own life, and therefore it should apply to everything that we do if we're truly committed to that practice of faith, hope, and love, to be on board that love train. And yet people are afraid to talk about faith like even in the news media, they don't always talk about faith without having some component of fear equated with it. And here we are having two men talk about a conversation about how do we succeed in business, how do we succeed in life and excel.
Yeah, I mean, that's really well said, and you're right on about that. And like I said, I just think people were moving in this direction. I will tell you, I never ever talked about faith. Like, I've been a speaker for 15 years. I've written 6 books. I didn't really talk about it at all. When God began to encourage me to start to share the things that I believe, I said to him, I said, I don't do wooey stuff. Okay. And you know, cause you're a speaker, like there's topics like communication, persuasion, productivity that are like, you know, marketing, branding that are like real topics. And then there's sort of like mindset and, you know, abundance and faith. And what I found in sharing this message is like when an atheist sits at my event and starts journaling notes from God, and they come up to me with 2 pages of notes on a yellow pad of paper, like the one I'm holding. Like I had a woman come up to me and said, I wrote about her in this book. She came up to me and said, I'm an atheist and I have 2 pages of notes from God. How does that work? And I was like, hey, like you're the atheist. You tell me how that, I mean, I can't answer the question. You have to answer that question. But the point there was I, for years, thought God was only going to speak to his people, right? Next thing you know, he's having a conversation with an atheist. And I realized maybe I shouldn't put rules on who he can have a conversation with, you know? And that's a part of this movement, is just connecting people to their original source, connecting people to the creator, and frankly, like letting him do the work, because he's got it, you know?
Yeah. Ed, I thank you, man. Thank you. Tell me the name of the book and the other books that you've written, because I want people to be able to not only get your latest book, but everything else.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. Yeah, the latest book is called God Talks. It's right over my shoulder here. The website is easy. It's just godtalks.com. All my books are on Amazon. My last book before this is called The 21-Day Miracle. It's a book on how to achieve the extraordinary in a short period of time. That's on Amazon too. By the way, that's my by far best-selling book. That was Amazon's #1 business book. It was number 22 for all books on Amazon at one point. It's that one went gangbusters. So yeah, I recommend get both of them. And I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to say that. I love sharing the message and seeing the movement grow. So I appreciate it.
Again, thank you for your service to the military, the Marine Corps. Flying is not an easy task when you're a fighter pilot, and war is never an easy task, and you were there in the Iraq War. So thank you for your service, Ed. And
Yes, sir.
you continue to give great service to humanity, so we appreciate you. I got to ask you a final question. What's your hope for America?
So really simply, I actually think we're on the verge of one of the greatest revolutions since about 1776. I don't think we see it, largely because the mainstream media is communicating this anger division stuff that I was just talking about. But I travel the world, man, and I know you do too. And I see hope in people's eyes. I see frustration. I do see some discouragement with the leadership that we currently have. But I do see hope. And we've got the ability now to be able to make change so fast thanks to the internet. I think over the next year to 18 months, there's going to be a massive, and I mean this when I say bloodless revolution, I think we're going to be able to take over some significant things in a really, really good way, and really start to be the kind of light in the world that we were created to be as a country.
Ed Rush, thank you, my friend. Good to see you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Don't be a stranger. I want to thank our guests tonight, Amir Windom and Ed Rush. And my final word tonight is that I feel inspired by both of these gentlemen. I feel lifted up. Hopefully you do too, because their message is so on point with how we must sustain our lives and propel our lives through faith, hope, and love. And to do exactly what Amir Windom has taught us tonight, and that is to gracefully struggle. You don't know my struggle, but you can see me winning through the power of hope. Until next time, America, good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your friendly conductor. All aboard the Love Train.
All aboard. Come on, all aboard.
Let me break it down for you like this.
The rhythm of love is easy to find if you're listening. The color of light isn't red, black, or white, but it's crimson. We all bleed the same. If you don't feel the groove, it's alright. Just give it time, give it time. Come on, y'all. Get on board. Mankind won't survive if our hearts beat inside a hateful rhythm. You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price of forgiveness, and we all bleed the same. Yeah. If you don't feel it now, just wait. It's coming on, the love train. Just give it time, give it time. Get on board. That means you and you
on the love train.
get on board.
All creeds and colors,
Brothers
all sisters and
and
brothers
sisters,
on the love train.
get on board the love train. Everyone's invited. We're all united on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, my sisters and brothers, get on board on the love train. Woo-hoo! Yeah. It's alright. Just give it time. Keep on marching on. Keep on being strong. Get on board the love train.
Your America and my America.
United we stand, divided